Lauren from 5 or 6 years ago, I can see that version of me being like, oh, I can't leave this job after 3 months, like, and like losing out on this like incredible place that I am now. So generally that is always going to be the advice, is like, if there's an opportunity in front of you, take it and see where it takes you.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting skills that data professionals use on a daily basis. Plus, we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So thank you for tuning in, and if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. And as always, folks, happy learning. Today with us, we have Lauren Rosenthal. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic.
Awesome.
We start our episodes by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Totally. It makes me feel like a superhero with my origin story here.
It should.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So I think my background is in healthcare. I went to school for a psychology undergrad, and then I went straight into a master's program for occupational therapy. And I was an OT for about 8 years. I think I could tell you, like, 4 months into my first job, that I was like, oh no, this is not necessarily the right choice. I remember like calling my mom and being like, Mom, I don't know about this. And she's like, absolutely not. Like, try different places, try different settings, try different people. Like, you are not giving this up right away. So, I left that job fairly quickly. It was not the right fit for me. I moved to Denver. I tried a bunch of different healthcare areas. I tried, home health. I tried skilled nursing facilities. None of it was what I was looking for. None of it was the right fit for me. And then I moved back home to Philadelphia. It's where I grew up here for the most part. And from there, I kind of got into school-based occupational therapy, which was like a better fit, more so for the people that I was working with and the fact that I liked working with students. And still, like, it was not the thing that I saw myself doing forever. So I kind of started thinking more about, like, what is it that I like about my job? What is it about my job that I don't like? And what kind of can I see myself doing next? Like, what is the ideal state for me? And so I kind of came up with a couple of like big things that I knew were going to be pretty like necessary. Very much like work-life balance. I wanted to kind of get into tech, and I wanted to be remote. I'm like an extreme introvert. And so being home and being alone is kind of like fantastic for me. So I started like looking at like, okay, well, what do other, occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language pathologists, like, what do they do if they know that this field isn't right for them? And one of the things that came up in like, I want to say this was maybe 2018 that I started thinking about this really seriously, was UX design. And I started like really looking at this idea, and it was like, user experience design. It's all about like how people interact with websites, like how they're navigating through it. Does what they're doing make sense intuitively? Are the buttons in the right place? Is the path right? And for me, it felt like, okay, well, occupational therapy is all about accessibility. It's all about making things easier for people. This seems like it could be cool. And I went through a whole UX design bootcamp, and it was great, and I loved it, and I never did anything with it.
Oh!
I didn't even get as far as applying for jobs. I didn't get active on LinkedIn. I finished the bootcamp. I was like, that was really cool, and that was it. So I take that to mean like it wasn't necessarily the right fit for me. It wasn't the right time. Like, I, along the way, had heard so often. Like, it's really tough to break into. You know, there's people out there that went to school for this. It's going to be really challenging. And that like scared me off, essentially, I think.
Mm.
So a couple of years later, it was like, I know it was happening around the same time as the pandemic, but like, I don't know if you're anything like me. Pandemic times are just like, there's no, I can't tell. I look back and I'm like, I don't know what year this was. I don't know what time of year this was. So, but it was
Same.
pandemic time. And I was like, okay, still really want, you know, remote work life balance technology. What about like front end web development? It's like, that sounds cool. So I started taking Udemy courses and I was like, HTML, awesome, love it. Like CSS, so cool, so much fun. Um, and then I got to JavaScript and I was like, I, it just did not click with my brain. And there was like no accountability there. So like there were definitely other factors, but it just wasn't, that wasn't it either. And I was content enough at my job, at the school, that it was like, you know, not a pressing need for me. Um, and then my school best friend moved away. The boss that I really kind of jived with left. You know, a bunch of people kind of like moved on. And I was like, all right, well, this is now really serious. Like, it is
Mm-hmm.
no longer a place where I'm content. I need to figure it out. And right around that same time, I had started getting on TikTok, which like was my best and worst idea I think I've ever had. It is the biggest time suck like to this day, but I also credit it for like introducing me to data. So I came across a TikTok of a girl. Her name was Charlotte Chase. She's a data analyst in the Philadelphia area, which is, I'm sure, why she came across my FYP. But she was talking, you know, she was talking about SQL, and she was talking about like she went from, I don't know, I think she like 74,000 to over $150,000 in 4 years, and just like the growth and like the salary definitely caught my eye, but the SQL, I was like, this sounds really cool. And HTML seemed like it made sense to me. And like there are certain languages that I was like, these make sense. Um, so I started really seriously thinking about it. I took some like entry level Udemy courses in SQL. I did some like SQL tutorials, and I loved it. It was so cool, so much fun. I felt like that was my superpower. I was like, oh, I can write this thing and then I get these results that I mean to get, and like, coolest thing ever. Love it. Um, and so that was kind of like the start of where I kind of went to. And from there, it was a lot of, you know, I found Maven, and that was kind of where I did a lot of my upscaling, especially with SQL. The advanced SQL course was like a big part of my learning, and kind of realizing like it's, I can do more than just the basics. So that was a big part of it. And um, I think it was, a lot of it was like right time, right place. So, you know, the the whole school had changed. People were leaving. I didn't have the same close connections. I loved SQL. I loved the idea of data viz. And so it really was just like, that was, I like, I don't know how much I believe in fate and stuff, but I do feel like it was just like it serendipitous. You know, everything
Mm-hmm.
happened at the right time, in the right way, and that was kind of where it got started.
That's awesome. So, what is it that you do at Maven now?
So I have a couple of different kind of roles, which we're a very small team, and I don't think that Maven often like gets looked at as a small, like, obviously people know we're a small company, but like there's about, I want to say like less than 20 of us that are full time working on this, like this product that, you know, at least I think is really phenomenal. I learned most of my skills, so I like kind of have a bias there. Um,
Absolutely. I did not know that it was the team that small either.
yeah, it's like, it's really cool, and it's like, it's so, I'm not answering your question, but it's like, it's a lot of fun. It's so small that like everybody that works there wants to be there for the same reason. And I think that
Mhm.
like that is a huge benefit of being on a small team. The other benefit for me at least was like, or is, I can kind of be a part of a lot of different things. I realized while I was in the school environment that I wanted to know things that were going on. I wanted to know about like, okay, well, what's administration doing and what is technology doing and like what are the plans for next year? And I loved kind of like having my hand in different pots. And so in a small company, that's like, I don't know if it's expected, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So my official title is customer success lead and analytics specialist. So for me, that means a big part of my job is working with our B2B customers. So, Maven in a large part is about individuals going to the platform, learning, upskilling, maybe like building a portfolio. But on the other side of that is the teams side of the platform, and that's where I focus a lot of my time. So I work with teams of people in organizations who are looking to like build their skills, so that like, and the customer success part of this comes in from jump. So I walk them through the platform, I set them up, I check in on them, I kind of like provide any kind of progress updates. I'm the main point of contact. So that's the customer success part of everything. And then I also like, when I got into Maven, one of the big things for me was I want to continue to flex that analyst muscle. Like I just learned all these new skills, and I had a data analyst job for 3 months before I moved to Maven. And it was cool and it was great. And like, I didn't want to lose those skills. So I do some of our like own internal analytics. I look at like customer retention. I look at like team usage. I look at individual usage, and I'm kind of like, a lot of it is ad hoc. So we're thinking about like, what levers can we pull to make this a better platform? How can we like be more effective and like expand to other students? And that is kind of part of my role too. So a lot of it is customer success, and I am lucky enough that the team is like very aware of the fact that I really enjoy doing data. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of the time, if there's like requests or questions or needs, they know like, oh, go to Lauren, she would love to dig into this.
Yeah. So, how much overlap do you see with your healthcare experience and this experience? Because what I'm hearing is like there's a lot of people analytics, like people behaviors that you're looking at.
Definitely. So I think I like look back on my time in healthcare entirely differently now. I think that one of the big things, and I knew this before I got into it, but one of the big things that I got into occupational therapy for was helping people. I wanted to make people's lives better. I wanted to make them easier. And that is something that like still sticks very firmly to this day. So I totally forgot this, but one of my other additional duties at Maven is I am the SQL TA. So in all of our SQL courses, I'm the person who answers questions. I'm the person who like gets to help, right? So I think that is a huge part of it, where like I get to help our teams, I get to help individuals, I get to help my own team when they need something. So I think that is a part of it. But I also like, I don't know, so many of the soft skills that I gained as an OT are so transferable. Like talking to people on different levels. For in occupational therapy, you're often talking to doctors who obviously know a lot. You're talking to patients, you're talking to family members, you're talking to kids, you're talking to their parents. And so like figuring out that right fit where it's like, what information can I provide that makes sense, and how can I provide it in a way that is accessible to that person? And that feels really relevant to me too. Like, again, kind of talking to students, like they are potentially not like very well versed in SQL, reasonably so. So how can I break these concepts down easier? Or I'm talking to my team where like, all of the instructors have this like fairly high level analytical background. And so I know that I can approach them in a different way. So I think that like those kinds of skills were like, I don't think that they could be beat on the job. I think that like learning and developing those skills was essential to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. And I know we had talked a little bit previously, and you have additional skills that kind of overlap into what you do in your career. So let's head into talking about some fun bits.
Awesome.
Hey, nerd, are you looking for a career in data? I would absolutely love to help you out. I just launched a data career strategy program that helps folks break into data without breaking anything. I provided a link in the show notes if you want to learn more information about it. Now, back to the fun bits.
Yeah, so I think fun bits, nerdy bits. I was like racking my brain to kind of think about like, not that I am a particularly cool person, but like, is this nerdy enough? Is this what we're talking about? And the one thing that like came up over and over and over again was the fact that I am a huge reader. And from that means that I am like I didn't realize it in the time that I started, but like I did and do so much like data gathering around my own reading habits. So it's like, how many books am I reading? How many authors did I read this year? How many pages? Like, what is the theme? What's the, like, what's the word? The genre? All of those things. I'm tracking them and fairly detailed. And it's like one of those things where I look back now and I'm like, I didn't think that I ever was really super into data. And that is apparently not true. Because that is such a big part of my personality is like the amount that I read and how closely I like look at those things and how I can dissect that. And last year I read a ton of fiction, almost entirely fiction. And like seeing that in my own data this year, I'm like, okay, let's try for some nonfiction. Let's bring in some other stuff. So like being able to make decisions too based on the data that I have is really like it's a lot of fun. And it's something that I've done for a long time without really recognizing that that was kind of what I was doing.
Yeah, yeah. That's the case with a lot of my guests. Like one of my most previous guests, Jack Blandon, was talking about how he used to look at all of the stats on baseball cards, like a lot. And then we kind of made that conclusion like, oh yeah, I guess I've always been a data professional too. So it's just so fun to see that like childhood dream kind of wrap back around. It's like, oh, I've always been this person.
Yeah, it's like it's so I mean, it's really crazy to like think about, and I think that I've always been a lot more about like my own. So like, I track my Peloton exercise really closely and like my Fitbit, like the first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is like, let me check how well I slept last night. Like I don't already like intuitively know it, but all of those things have always been a part of my life. And like, it was just never something that I like paid close attention to until I started talking about data like on LinkedIn and stuff. And I was like, wait a second, this is all of this stuff is data. All of
Mm-hmm.
it is relevant. And like, if I'm like this and didn't realize that I had all these like interests in data previously, what if other people are doing the same thing and they're not aware of like a potential interest in this area? So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's like I don't know. I think every data analyst, data professional that I've like talked to, they have some kind of like, oh well, yeah, like I track this thing, or like I really know how like the Netflix algorithm works, or like something where it's like not related to their job, but it's absolutely related to data.
Mm-hmm. And I think also it depends on like how you use that data. So you can track, you can have a Fitbit, you can just look at it day in and day out or whatever, right? But when you leverage it to solve problems, that's when you really know, like, yes, I am absolutely a data professional. So for an example, I had actually gotten in a car accident some point in my life where I had my Fitbit. Something had happened where it was like, oh, we need to know, the time. And I was like, I don't know. I just, my mind's all crazy. I have absolutely no idea. But wait, let me look at my Fitbit. And you could see like a spike in your heart rate. And I was like,
Mhm.
I can assume it's probably around this time.
I wish I could remember the situation, because now that you say that, I'll have to think about what exactly it was. But there is a situation where like I screenshotted my Fitbit heart rate and I sent it to my sister, and I was like, guess what happened on this spike? Like, and she knew immediately what I was talking about. And I wish I could remember what it was, but it was exactly that. It was like, let me use this to like show you that, this thing happened. It's
Yeah,
totally.
absolutely. Do you ever look back at your reading metrics and find anything that surprises you?
Um, I think generally no. I'm very well aware of like kind of how much I read and what I read. I do think that like recently the biggest one really was the idea that like all I read was fiction, and I don't think that I ever like I listen to a ton of podcasts, and typically they're like marketing based or like B2B based or like SaaS, because I don't have that background, and so I like want to get to a point where I understand like everything going on in my company. Um, and so I look at my reading and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's all fiction. And I didn't recognize it because I was like supplementing other areas of my life with like nonfiction kind of stuff. Um, so kind of like looking back at those results and being like, oh, that was a lot of books, and like they were all great and really enjoyable and I loved them. And I could probably expand my horizons a little bit. I mean, the other, I guess, like the other one would be like just the amount that I read. Um, I think it was 2015, maybe. And granted, I just moved to Denver. I didn't have a ton of friends there. I had a dog who like wanted me to be home with him all the time, but I ended up reading like I want to say 530 books that year. And yeah, it was I was coming close to like an average of two a day. I was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
yeah, I was like, okay, this is, and since then I've like slowly decreased. So the next year is like 450, and the next year is like closer to 400. So it is still a very, very like it's a big amount, but I was like, okay, your entire life cannot be dedicated to this one hobby. You need to do other things. So
You'll laugh. Last year, I had a goal, and this was a stretch goal of reading 5 books for the year. I achieved the goal. I read 5.
amazing. I like I love like I don't know, I'm a part of a lot of like Facebook groups who like talk about like reading and like what they're reading and how much they read, and I totally get it, obviously, because I track my own stuff. But like I'm aware that it's not normal to read as much as I do, and I love any amount of reading that people do, because I'm just like, it's such a great hobby for me that I want everybody else to love it too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that's incredible, like 5 books is amazing.
Well, thank you. So, when you're trying to say like learn new things, do you usually gravitate towards books, or how else would you learn new things?
um I think my primarily I would say like podcasts are a big one for me. So the issue with books for me is like if I have my Kindle in front of me, I'm like I could be reading a fiction book right now. So like all of the nonfiction books that I'm reading this year are all paperback, because I know if I get my Kindle out, it will no longer be about that book. So um I have like I don't know 8 or 9 nonfiction books. A lot of them are like business based, or like um one of the one that I read earlier this year was Start With Why by Simon Sinek, and just like talking about like why the why of things is so important. So that was, yes, I absolutely read books, but I think primarily it's podcasts, lots of podcasts. That's like when I'm not listening to audiobooks. My midday walk with the dog, who you may or may not see behind me, is it's always some kind of business podcast. That's
Okay.
kind of how I like make myself feel better. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go take the dog for a walk, and I will listen to this thing and like learn more. Um, so there's that, and then like I don't know. I found that like with more technical stuff, like the online courses were absolutely the way for me to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, anytime I'm like, obviously I have access to all of the technical courses that I could want. But like, if I'm confused about like a business topic, or I'm like, oh, what is this like go to market thing? Like, what does that even mean? The first thing I do is like look up, like, are there any courses about go to market strategies? Like, so
Yeah,
I've learned that online courses are also like fairly successful.
absolutely. Well, Lauren, do you have any final recommendations or words of encouragement for the listeners?
Oh, what is the listener population? I think that my recommendations would be different based on who it is.
This being a career podcast, those that are looking to get information about what kinds of skills data professionals use on a daily basis, as well as just general nerds that love data.
Amazing. Great. So I think for people thinking about um, maybe getting into the career, I think that it's so important to learn. It's so important to learn, I would typically say like Excel, SQL, and some kind of data visualization tool. But even more important than that is learning one tool really, really, really well, and kind of becoming the expert in that. Um, and I think for like just generally, one of the things that I realized in this whole journey for me, I kind of skipped over it in my origin story, but like right after I learned data skills and everything, I was a business intelligence analyst at a health insurance company. And that was like for 3 months, and it was great. And I loved the team that I worked with. And then this opportunity at Maven came up. And I think having spent 8 years in occupational therapy, not being incredibly happy, like, but being too afraid to take the jump, my advice is take the jump. That is like, you know, it was absolutely the right choice for me to leave that first job even after 3 months. It was like I couldn't be happier where I am, and I can just like learn from 5 or 6 years ago. I can see that version of me being like, oh, I can't leave this job after 3 months, like and like losing out on this like incredible place that I am now. So generally that is always going to be the advice, is like, if there's an opportunity in front of you, take it and see where it takes you.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so very much, Lauren, for coming on the show and sharing your stories with us.
Absolutely, anytime.
And as always, folks, happy learning.